I feel like we'll open up the discussion with a nice broad question so that everybody can have a hand in it, right? So let's find out. In 2022, we're still having panels, we're still having discussions, we're still hearing and seeing op-eds centered around diversity and inclusion within the entertainment industry. Why do y'all think we are still having this discussion? I'll let Gabby start first.
Yes, Miss Gabby.
Man, put me on the spot right off the
Mr.
bat.
Gabby.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like
Well, it's only 2 men up here. I had to start with you first.
That's a good way to go.
I mean, I think just being in the front lines of a lot of those conversations, it's the conversation is ongoing. I think it's wide open now. Well, I don't want to say wide open. It's more open now than it's ever been, and it's kind of a responsibility when you're on any level of this mission of kind of shifting narratives and upending the norm of industry, an industry that's been set in its ways for a long time, to continue the convo. I think a lot of it, and we talk about it internally at our shop, is the consistency, because we've seen these moments come and go, and it's kind of a fad or just a blip. I think it's the responsibility of those, especially in media, to maintain the conversation in a really, to some degree, aggressive way and consistent way. So I hope they continue for a long time to come.
Cool.
I was just going to say, I think a great follow-up that maybe with the Elizabeth, because even in our early conversations, we were definitely talking about how this is not just about a conversation, this is about action, this is about movement. I know every single person on this panel understands that actionability and impact are far more important than the conversation. So if you want to speak to how you are doing that in your work and where you think we should go forward.
Thank you. I'm actually really excited to answer this question because I know there's the typical answer, but I have a very interesting perspective. So I feel like this is the same conversation because there's been so much progress since we first started it. So the question is, why are we still having these conversations? I think because it's taken this long for people to actually accept and acknowledge that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. When I was a film student, there weren't very many people who looked like me at my design school. I'm coming from the Art Center College of Design. It's known as the Harvard of Design. And it's where the cultural aesthetic for the nation, for the next generation, and the next generation gets founded. Ferrari designers, our illustrators from the New York Times, our photographers for the advertising that we consume and shape our political and personal identities from, they'll come from our school. And when I was a student there, I didn't see very many people like me, and I started one of the first Black and brown student groups. And we were ignored. Even though we went into high schools and we took photographs of us talking to students about how these were viable career paths in film and in entertainment and in design, the school wasn't that interested in what we were doing. And so to come full circle 10 years later, where I'm invited to be an advisory board member for a global institute on Black girls in film and media, and a Center of Design, Equity, and Inclusion that only has been at our school, which is 92 years old. This center is only 2 or 3 years old. It's fun to be on this side and see that now there's investment. It took a long time for people to acknowledge that it was an issue, but now we're seeing investment because everybody on this panel, they're paid to push this movement forward. Whereas before, they were unheard voices, they were volunteers. So this shows that the industry is investing, and that's exciting. So it's not the same conversation anymore.
Speak on it, sis.
Yeah, she got some applause for that. I'd like to, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Carla.
Okay. We're fighting, no. I'd like to hear from Jamila about that same question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with both. I think we have to continue to have these conversations and these discussions. I think we have made progress, but we know that this is a never-ending journey, right? It's going to evolve, it's going to change, but it is important to keep it at the forefront that, this is an important work. I think, similar to history, if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it. So we need to continue to have this conversation, address the issues, try to come together as a collective to figure out how do we do more, how do we do better, how can we be more impactful, but totally agree with both points of view.
Yeah. I think something that I've learned on my journey, both with my work with D&I at Universal and Rotten Tomatoes, is what you don't repair, you repeat. And I think that is sort of the lesson and the refrain of so much of this. And what I really love is with many of your organizations, you went against stark headwinds to make the impact that you have already done, But also in some cases, I feel that investment was from the jump, the understanding that this is not just a movement, this is going to be a part of how we do business. And I know, Janina, I don't want to brag on that a little bit as a universal employee, but the longest running film DE&I program is something to applaud that was done before any major studio in Hollywood, and that was Donna Langley, Jeff Shell, and the team at Universal, and your team in execution, along with a person we both know, Craig Robinson.
Thank you so much for the shameless plug.
I know, sorry.
You know, it really speaks to the commitment of our chairman, Donna Langley, because she saw a need to lean into this work long before it was leading conversations as we are today. And she did it because she said we need to have a dedicated team forming our diversity and inclusion strategies, as opposed to, and I don't know if any of you have gone through this, but where your diversity, equity, and inclusion team kind of sits in another area where someone else who's doing another job is also doing the DEI. And that's kind of how it was way back when, and then she said, we're going to create our own department. So to have that commitment from the top is really what's key in creating our success. And then just a little bit to the first question that was asked, I'm so thrilled that the conversations are still happening, because one of my biggest fears was, you know, when we went through the tragedies of 2020, I thought, there was such an incredible lean-in from individuals where I had never seen that in the work that I do before, and I want that momentum to continue. So knowing the conversations are happening, knowing that the conversations are inherent to how we do business, I think is so important. So.
Cool. All right, so I'd just like to take a moment to let you know something that has happened. I would like for each of you to take a moment to let us know something that's happened outside of your organizations that you wanted to bring within to build diverse teams and or programs. And I'd like to start that conversation with Lacey Wright in talking about Bold Power.
Yes, in my past life, I ran Kendrick Sampson's nonprofit, which was Build Power, and we led a massive movement in 2020 when we were at the front lines of the protests and the riots, and we were working directly with BLM, and so many folks reached out to us saying, how can we help? Where should I donate? What books should I get my employees to read? And these were studio execs and major producers, and I was like, why don't you greenlight something better? That means more than any donation that you're going to give to anybody else. And I think that was a lot of, sometimes what I think people forget in this world is a lot of times when racial injustice happens in the world, we think, oh, we donate to someone else, the ACLU, another org, we'll call on Congress, we'll ask someone else to do it. But not as often do we look into how we do it internally in our company, but I think that's changing in the past few years, and I think that's really moved that movement forward. But how do you each individually take responsibility for racial justice beyond, and how do you really think about the ways that your office operates will affect the world at large?
Olga, I would love for you to also answer that same question, if you don't mind, because again, I do feel, she's handing you that mic, so sorry. I do feel that, again, what's great about this panel is even when we were having our pre-call, everyone up here was talking about, oh, I love what you're doing, I love what you're doing, and it's this meeting of minds, I think, within the DE&I space that allows us to sort of, you know, like we all do in Hollywood, borrow from the other guy a little bit, and then put that into the work that you're able to do every day and get even more impact because it's spreading.
Hi, I'm Olga Segura. I'm one of the co-founders of the Latinx House. And oh my God, the Latinx House. The Latinx House started actually because something that happened outside from Hollywood. Well, in a way, Monica Ramirez wrote this letter, the Dear Sisters letter, and you know, was, how do you say that? Like, presented on Times magazine.
Yeah, like
published,
it was a
published,
watermark
sorry, that word.
moment. Yeah,
This is my second language, so
That's okay, girl. You're doing great.
Actually, my third. I speak French
girl.
too. Anyway, so you know, talking about movements that have solidified our movements and other movements, I think you know, Time's Up. I gotta give some love to Time's Up because I think that movement brought us closer together. America Ferrara, Eva Longoria, Monica Ramirez, Alex Martinez Kondraki, and then we built the Latinx House. And I think that us coming together again, not just the Latinx community, but all of us together is going to be where the power is. For us building better narratives that describe us all at the same time in a better world, in a better way. The Latinx House, I'm so proud of this program because we collaborated with Netflix and Shondaland and Glow Nation, and I bring Shondaland into the picture because Shonda Rhimes is not Latina, she's, and she doesn't have any descendants, but she cares about seeing us and seeing us grow and seeing our community grow. So we built the Adelante program to give opportunities to Latina directors to go shadow an episode at Shondaland, and then Gloria Calderon Kell, Glow Nation also give us that opportunity. Yeah, and Sundance is part of it as well, Netflix.
And I think it just goes to show you that the industry really got behind these efforts. Granted, they were watershed moments that it allowed that impact to take hold, and I think none of us would say that's the way we wanted it to happen, but the gears got in motion, and you can see that the impact is not only happening, but there's now accountability on that impact, and there are people invested in seeing that these programs not just thrive, but flourish. And Janelle, when we talk about it, I don't think that anyone can say that that is not built into everything you're doing currently at the Academy. So much of that, I think, just from my work with you guys, has been member-led. And from talking to the members like Alana Mayo and Alma and folks like that, they really speak to that impact. So talk about how you reshaped those efforts in your relatively new role at the Academy.
Relatively new.
I know, relatively.
Yes, I know.
I mean, it's a 100-year-old institution, so.
It really is, y'all. And, I think first it's important to acknowledge that the Academy is a 95-year-old organization, and it really does represent every aspect of this industry. So what you're talking about, Jacqueline, with this idea of the members leading this work, the members are this industry. And I am so honored and so thrilled, actually, to be working with members that truly do care about the future of this industry and the future of film. The reality is that art thrives from diversity, and that includes the art of filmmaking, and our members see that value and are regularly investing in it. So in terms of what we're doing, there's a lot, right? The Academy, yes, we're known for the Oscars, but for those of you that don't know, we're a wonderful nonprofit that has a wonderful film library, an archive, most recently a museum, in addition to our 10,000 members. And we're constantly committed to celebrating excellence in filmmaking. So what does that mean? Our members are in this position now where they're challenging and questioning what excellence looks like. They're doing that in really being thoughtful about who they're selecting and bringing in for new membership. We're doing that in our archive when we're thinking about the types of films that we're restoring and how we're describing them. We're thinking about that in our museum. What stories are we talking about, and how are we challenging that complex history that film really does have? So I think we're in this beautiful moment at this time where our members, the industry, are craving this sort of information and knowledge. And back to that earlier question again, why are we having this conversation again? Sure, we are, and I'm sure many of us on this panel, we've been having this conversation for a long time, but every time we have it, there's someone new that we're engaging, that we're opening a door to more knowledge, to a deeper conversation, to further insight, and that's powerful. So I have to say, yes, the efforts of the Academy are member-led. I'm inspired daily by these artists that we get to work with, and they're pushed through because of the commitment of the staff and of the rest of the industry.
Cool. I want to talk about this subject for a minute. How do we avoid that trap of lip service DEI? You know what I mean?
We all know what it is.
We all know what it is. Those people that show up for that photo op but don't put the elbow grease behind what was coming up after the photo. You know what I'm saying? So I would like to, who wants to start with that one?
I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding in a lot of these programs, but I will maybe, just because I do a lot of their moderating, say that DEI at Universal, that's part of the programming.
Yeah, GTDI, and we do have the longest department name at the studio. It's Global Talent Development and Inclusion. So we rebranded as GTDI. And really, I think for us, there are two things that I think help us avoid or fall into that trap of the lip service or checking the box for DEI. First and foremost, Me personally, I'm very competitive and driven to win. So that has filtered, and my team is exactly the same way. So what we do is we first take a look at a need, or we find an area where there's a void, and then we ask ourselves, what's the result? What's the win that we want to have? And then we work backwards from there. And it's worked for us. I mean, one example is our Composers Initiative. Literally, in 2017, I sat down with the president of Film Music and the team members we had in place at that time, and we saw that I think less than 6% of the films were scored by women. Couldn't even find any data on people of color scoring. We knew there was a need. What's the win? We want to see them scoring our films. And I think now we're 5 years in. Our department's still really new, almost 6 years. And now I'd say over a dozen films or projects within NBC Universal have been scored by people who've gone through our program. That's what we want. We want to build the career momentum. So that's kind of the first area of focus. The second area for us is talent that comes through our programs. We make it clear from day one that the duration of your time in our program or initiative does not dictate how you get support from us. So we continue working for the talent long after their term in the program has ended. Because we don't win unless our talent wins, and we have to work hard to build that momentum and help them earn production credits in the industry.
Yeah. I want to follow up just real quick with this one on this impact, because when we talk about diversity and inclusion, as I like to say, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. And more importantly, asked to dance on a floor that is accommodating for you and everyone in the building. It's a hard thing to do in practice because it involves people's buy-in, and sometimes with stakeholders where you have to get them to understand it. Even if it is coming from the top, there may be individual stakeholders that could pocket veto these efforts. So Asif, I want to ask you, how do you manage stakeholder buy-in? Because for programs like this, they live and die with stakeholder buy-in.
Completely. And I think the most important thing, excuse me, is everyone understanding why we're doing it. This isn't a nice to have. It's not something we do because we have to. It's critical for our business. And how do you make sure that every single person understands their role, their responsibility? The second thing is, when we talk about diverse talent, we're talking about amazing talent. And that piece has to be out there clearly. It's not there's great talent and then there's diverse talent. No. They're in the same space. And once we get that message across, and when people can see that and see the benefits, then it's huge and then it's powerful. The second piece is culture. Culture is the biggest piece. If the culture is one of inclusion, then everyone has to adapt to that culture. If that's only in pockets of an organization and it's not across the piece and everyone doesn't understand it, then it's more difficult. So I completely believe that to get those people engaged and everyone engaged, once the culture changes, then people have no option, right? And for the ones who, because I get asked a lot of times, what about the ones who just never get it? Because there is, right? We all know there's those people who never get it. Yeah.
Like that.
The thing is,
Yep.
do we waste energy on them? Or do we actually say that the culture will become one of inclusion and those who don't get it will exit themselves? Because they'll say, well, this place isn't the way it used to be. And that's where we need to get to with getting everyone on board.
Well, but just to piggyback off of what you said, you have to educate people, when it comes to these types of things, because some people may, out of their ignorance, not really know. And so they react in a way out of ignorance, not necessarily out of education, right? But having said that, let's talk a little bit. I want to get Lucy, Olga, and Gabby's answer on this. You guys work outside of the studio system, and it offers a set of new challenges and benefits. Can you guys tell us how your efforts right now at Latinx House, Hillman Grad, and M88 push representation inside the studio systems?
I guess we're going to start down here with, Olga.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Carla. So I forgot to mention that Adelante program supports 3 Latina directors, and we're giving them a grant. So it's not anymore like, oh, you are coming and shadowing at Shondaland and Glow Nation. You should be very happy. Okay, how am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to pay for my nanny? Because I am a mom and I kind of continue doing the work. So we, Netflix came on board and gave us a really incredible grant that is like the dream, like people, like the three fellows were crying. Because it's very good. We're not supposed to say the number because it's.
But we're happy
It's a
for
secret.
them.
Very,
happy.
very happy. You
Yes.
know, the three fellows were like crying and we're like, oh my God, now I get to, you know, one of them was a mom. And so how are we really collaborating? By actually telling our Latina directors that they can continue doing the work, that it's okay, that we have their back, that it's okay if the project takes 6 years, but you have a break. We will believe in you because you're very talented and you're meant to do this. So, and we want to give them opportunity as well to get into the TV world, which is now where the money is. You know, these Latina directors, they do feature films and they don't have any idea how the TV world works. So I'm very proud of Adelante, and we're going to continue doing, hopefully for many, many years to come.
Gabby?
I think for us on the, being on the representation side, it's about the artists. If the artists are advancing and breaking through some of these, prior norms in not just in their own kind of steps they have to take to getting the jobs, to getting their stories told, but also in the way that their narratives are communicated to the audiences and to the press. There's an education to that, and that's we count on the studios to listen, and they, it's give or take the moment. But when they do, they see the business that is in the black and brown and other stories that we're really trying to penetrate of industry. And as you see the successes come, you see the industry start to shift. So for us, it's really a bespoke approach to each artist and making sure that the studios, that the industry are seeing these artists for who they are and seeing those narratives for what it is. And also really emphasizing the cultural significance of each of these stories, because each one is a watershed moment. It's you only get to today because there is a Black Panther type moment, and we expect a Color Purple type moment to really create and all of a sudden you look up and the industry has shifted in a real way, and this next generation, which is really what it's all about at the end of the day, looks very different, and the stories being told look very different. So that's kind of the mission of the day for us.
Thank you.
Jamila, do you want to answer this one as well?
Well, it's a little different.
She
from
said,
my
give me that
side.
mic.
Yes, a little bit different, but
So at Lionsgate and Stars, we look at the work with kind of three guiding key words that we like to think of: sustainability. How is it sustainable? How is it really structural change? And then impact. And so we divide the work into 4 pillars. Our 4 pillars of DEI. So people, procurement, philanthropy, and of course content, because that's what we do. But really took a holistic approach because we know that it needs to be intrinsic to every facet of the business, and not just something that is one and done and separate apart from who we are as a company. And so, for instance, under the people pillar, from recruitment all the way through an employee's life cycle. So we implemented an inclusive hiring process. We revamped our internship program to really make sure that we were developing a diverse cohort of students. So this past year, 70% of our interns were diverse. We had a few conversions, so real success. We actually launched a program with Florida A&M, a historically Black university, where in our Denver office, which is our tech hub for Stars, we know there tends to be a lack of diversity there. And so we partnered with FAMU to bring 5 interns into technology in the Denver office. We broke down the barriers of, finance, speaking similar to Olga, and we provided housing, we provided airfare, we provided transportation while they were there, and it was hugely successful. So we really are intentional. What is going to be impactful? And procurement, we launched a supplier diversity program in the last year and a half. In the first year, we doubled our spend with diverse vendors. So really trying to do things that not only impact the industry, but also the community. And of course, content. So on the Star side, our whole brand initiative is to take the lead where we are really looking to amplify women and underrepresented audiences. You know, we lead the industry with on-air talent being women and diverse.
Oh, we see P-Valley.
You see
We
P-Valley.
blind spotting. We see
Uncle
Outlander.
Clifford. Right. So we have a lot to be proud of. There's a lot more work that still needs to be done, but I think the approach is, again, holistic approach, every facet of the business. One thing I do want to touch on in terms of the people, and Asif touched on this around culture, is really creating a culture of learning. So we have a DEI learning journey, and some is mandatory, some of the training is mandatory, and then, of course, some is supplemental and voluntary, but I think really shifting the culture, knowing that this is the expectation as an employee here, as a leader here, this is what we expect of you, this is what we embrace, and this is what we value. I think that's been critical to our success.
Jamila, I'm not going to hold it against you that you went to FAMU and not Howard University.
Well, look, we have a partnership with Howard.
Because you know I'm a Bison, so I had to say that.
We had actually in my department, actually, we had a Howard University. We partnered with UCLA with their entertainment program, and so we represent with Howard as well.
Okay. You know I had to say something. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I was just saying, I want to make sure Lacey has a chance to answer this question too, but I also would say, and then I'm just sitting here, just jealous I couldn't go to a HBCU, but I'm in good company with Beyonce. And one day I will have a Coachella where I celebrate HBCU in my fantasy world. That's what we do. Kidding. Lacey, go ahead, though.
I mean, I'm grateful to work at Hillman Grad, which is a production company, and at the end of the day, we are the boots on the ground. We work most directly with artists, writers, creators, and Hillman Grad has a legacy of working with first-time writers, directors, and actors. And so I think we've all probably heard this for years, oh, there's not enough showrunners of color, there's not enough female directors, there's not enough, we can't seem to find them anywhere, despite all the databases I know everyone on this panel has built. And so for us, we thought, all right, if no one else is going to invest in the kind of talent that we're looking for, we're going to do it. So we built entry-level programs for emerging writers, actors, directors, and execs that we've gone on to work with and nurture. But also the other point is it's also about them building community amongst each other as creatives. We all know what it has been like to be the only person like you in the room, and it is so much easier to navigate this system, this behemoth that is the entertainment industry, when you have folks that both look like you and don't look like you and say, I've got your back. And that's really what we want to create at the end of the day, because that is how you can create anything in this industry, is collaboration. And so we wanted to make that home for them, and I think that's something special that we get to do because we work so directly with our artists.
I just want to piggyback and have Elizabeth jump in. Yes, girl, had to let you jump in because you've been sitting quiet for a minute. So I'm about to mess that up real quick. As a advisory board member of Graybane, how are you using what we've just discussed in terms of Black girls and Black girl initiatives?
Well, my company, my production company,
Yes.
is Graybane Film and Media.
Yes, film and media.
And I started that because there weren't that many diversity programs when I got out of film school, and I could not figure out how to get into the industry, and so I created my own niche, which is based off my background as a public health professional and a filmmaker, and so I make social and health impact films. But what I'm representing today is the Global Institute for Black Girls in Film and Media, and that is a step forward for for Arts Center College Design to start really engaging with the community. And really, instead of coming from the top down, we really want to learn what they're interested in, what they feel reticent about in terms of how Black women and girls have been represented in the media, and how we can connect directly with professionals in the industry to have those conversations, how we can also educate the next generation of content creators in terms of coded language in the media that we see and how it shapes people's ideas about certain people from different backgrounds. And so we're educating content creators, and we're also educating professional people who are working for networks and studios and making those decisions so they can shift a little bit away from those stereotypical narratives that we see a lot for the last 30 years and start really exploring the breadth of the Black community and all the different diverse stories we have to tell.
Yes, the breadth and the depth of all of those stories.
I really appreciate that too. I mean, we've definitely talked about the celebrations, but as we look forward, I think all of us would be lying if we didn't see that there were headwinds ahead, both economically and socioeconomically. There's a lot that I think as we look towards 2023 and beyond that folks are dealing with, including, the current state of theaters for so many of us, and also streaming. There's a lot of, I think, headwinds, but as we look forward, past these financial imperatives that we're facing, there still has to be a clear effort for representation on off screen. And sometimes these are conversations you're having specifically with budget folks, who I will go ahead and say sometimes see DE&I as a pull to resources more than a push. In certain cases, not always, but you have to, I think, advocate much more for the type of funding. What Jamila was talking about with, yes, we do need flights for this, folks, because the program is useless if they can't get there. So I want to concentrate on Janine, and also Asif, as all three of you run fairly large-scale programs that have to do this work in small doses, but also in big ones, and how, when you guys are having these conversations about resources, particularly, how you get buy-in so that these programs stay viable long-term. And I'll start with you, Janelle, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we talked a little bit about the business case earlier on, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The business case is clear, right? When we're investing in diverse stories, the public is consuming those stories, and that's really beautiful and powerful. And it's not surprising, right? It's not surprising. We're leaning into the makeup of this country, of the world, and people are excited to see themselves. So I think that's incredibly powerful to note. But when it comes to resources, there's always this question, there's not enough. And I always challenge and I say, actually, there's more than enough. Because when we create space, we might create demand for something we didn't even realize there was a demand for. And that's really how our work is centered, particularly at the Academy. We're constantly looking at ways to create access, to create space, to invest in that future of talent, to make sure that they're well equipped to enter into some of these spaces, these business meetings, and be able to articulate not only the demographic that they represent, but the psychographic that they represent, the communities that they're looking to engage, and how their stories transcend these kind of binary structures that we've built in our society. So I have to really say that to move the needle, it requires an investment in the next generation, as we see here, a testament to that. It also requires us to be willing to take a quote-unquote risk, and I say risk in quotes because at this point I'm like, y'all, what isn't a risk? I mean, we can barely leave the house these days. But that's really, I think an important philosophy, not only of mine, but of the Academy, is let's continue to invest in the next generation and set them up so that they can stand on their own in these spaces that don't often open their doors widely to them.
Janine, I'll go to you if you don't mind, just to sort of speak to, again, financial imperatives. Everyone, I think, is looking at budgets and beyond, and it's difficult choices because, again, this is about viability. If we invest too far in one way, headwinds may change, and then the business itself is at jeopardy. And so obviously we all understand that, but sometimes these intangibles are hard to communicate. And so how do you guys work to communicate those intangibles to financial dividends?
I'm not going to help you much with this one, Jacqueline. I'm going to be really honest with you. I've been incredibly fortunate since I joined Universal. I mean, we started, it was just me. I think I brought one executive, and we had a page, right? And I'm like, okay, now we're building a department from scratch. So I kind of started working on that infrastructure, and every year since I've asked for more, and I've been really fortunate because leadership has given me what we need. I mean, we're now 15, a team of 15, and we're spread across the content side of the business, all above the line with our writers and our directors. We also cover below the line, where I'd mentioned composers. We have a great traineeship. I've been really fortunate. So, and I just had my budget meetings, and hopefully I remain fortunate. That's all I can say. But I do think it's really important, to know that inherently the business that we work in is built upon relationships. And that is why I think historically you don't see a great amount of representation within the industry, because we haven't been invited to those circles or part of those relationships. So it's so important for what everyone on this stage does. We're knocking down those barriers. We're opening up those doors. We're going to show you who you should know. And I think that's how we're really making a mark and delivering the results So, and then also the other part for Universal, I just want to say, or any film studio for that matter, is, let's not forget, we're a revenue generating business, and it's pretty clear that having inclusive or diverse content is smart business. I mean, I just take a look at our summer blockbusters, and I'm still, shocked by this stat. I don't know why I am, but I'm just like, wow, that's fascinating. When I look at Minions, which has done tremendously well for us, and over 60% of that audience is not Caucasian. So that tells you right now we're driving business.
Yeah. Asif?
Yeah, so I think the whole sort of emphasis on the business case. I think we've talked about it a lot, but I think what's critical in this space, especially with the programs that we run, that it's built into what we do. So it's not we'll talk about it or we'll consider it. It's just part and parcel of our activities and how we sort of weave it in. I think the other thing, just to be, to give a slightly different perspective, I think we need to start pitching diversity or our efforts in diversity as any other business imperative, anything else we do in the business space. It's not the nice to have. So we need to really sort of show the results. And if you look at what we're doing, my focus very much is on, if we're running programs, they must be successful, every element. There must be buy-in. We must be ensuring we're bringing in diverse, underrepresented talent, but also ensuring that then after that, they have opportunities, because what's the point otherwise? It's not a box-ticking exercise, but it's really investing. And if that means we do a select number of programs, but do them really well, that's huge to me, because it's not about how many, it's about how well we do them.
Yeah, impact.
Exactly.
Impact. And I think that's the next, I remember when it was just diversity, then it was equitable diversity and inclusion. And I think now, as we go on this journey, impact is the new buzzword, because we've all kind of gotten the base level education, which was a long road, as Elizabeth can speak to, just that base level education. So now this is the level up. Carla?
So many things, so much time. So little time, so many things. Elizabeth, as a filmmaker, you've seen more than anyone with programs and practices that work and don't work, as it's related to the lives of people on set, yeah? So what would you say is something you see in your work that is unique for the work of the other incredible folks on this panel?
Thank you for that question, Carla.
You're welcome.
So the Global Institute for Black Girls Film and Media, coming out of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Center at Art Center College of Design, is in its nascent period. So we just launched this spring 2022. So we have one milestone so far in that we held a think tank this summer where we worked with Black women and girls. We had multiple generations participating, where we were basically having a heart-to-heart about what representation has looked like in the past, what it looks like today, how has that harmed, how has that helped, and what would they like to see in the future. And so we had women who were still in school, young girls, and we had film graduates, and we also had veterans in the industry who had been part of the early UCLA's LA Film Rebellion, all talking about their diversity of experience. And to answer your question, we're hoping that we can push beyond what we've seen so far in terms of really talking about what representation does to how people think about groups. Because that coded language, that symbology, those aesthetics, they shape how we're perceived in society, and that's how we're treated in the workplace, in the street, on the bus, by police officers. And so we're very much interested in going a little bit deeper beyond just what is diversity and what is representation. And yes, there's definitely a market value for that. There are people who are buying tickets from multiple communities, but how do you represent people responsibly? And so that's what we're talking about a lot. And it's really gratifying to hear all of these different centers talk about sustainability, because the reputation before for diversity programs when I was in school was that there was no real pipeline. You would be assigned to a writer's room as an intern, or you would get into that writer's program, and you never actually got hired for the show or for the film. And there were people who were career program participants. And so when someone like myself got out of school and was applying for the programs, I was competing with people who were in their 15th fellowship.
Wow.
And still hadn't gotten signed. And so, like I say, I know that there's still more further to go, but I just think that this is awesome, that there's investment now from industry, from studios, from networks, from universities. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Oh, yes.
I was all over
And
there.
then-
Oh, yes, you answered it and then some. Thank you so much.
I want to, because we do have a few minutes, but if I'm going to get everyone on this panel to answer the question, it will take the whole time. But I do think we talk so much about some of the struggles, we definitely need to talk about the celebratory stories, because I think everyone on these panels has at least one anecdote, both within their personal work, but more importantly, the work at large. And I'll just go ahead and share one with me. I moderated a panel not too long ago at ABFF. It was part of the GTI program, but this was what the greatest thing was. One of the persons on that panel, who is a busy working director, this girl has credits, and she was part of the program in 2012. She still made time out of her busy shooting schedule to participate in the 10th anniversary of the ABFF, the African Black Film Festival GTI program, because she literally said, everything I've done since then started with that program. And again, I love to see people that are really, like, not past this in their career in the sense that the work is not done, but past the moment in the program, still investing back in the program, because I think that speaks to its viability and how passionate they are on it. And I think of that story all the time. I'm like, this woman could literally be making thousands of dollars spending this day doing anything else, but she made it herself available for this. And I think that is a testament to the efforts. And so I'd love for all of you, if you have any anecdotes like that, either with your work or the work that you've gotten to witness, to share, because I think that is really what lights these programs more than anything, the personal stories of the people they affected and how they were able to become better creatives and artists in the industry because of it. And Olga, I'll start with you.
I need more time.
You need more time? Lacey, do you want to start?
I mean, I could rattle off a bunch of statistics about how amazing all of our fellows have gone on to do, and they've been signed, and they're writing, and they're directing. But I think my favorite moments have been when participants have come to me and said, I didn't believe I could be a writer. I didn't believe I could be a director. I didn't think that I could do it. And this program helped me believe it myself. And I think that's made the biggest difference for me to understand how often all of these young folks who are so incredibly talented, we picked like 25 people out of thousands and still don't believe in themselves. And so how important is that we surround them with that proof that they can do it. And so I think it's those moments that make me cry.
Oh, love it.
Sure, we'll go down the line. One of the greatest wins when I reflect on my time with the Academy has been really pushing forward with our representation and inclusion standards. And for those of you who aren't aware of these standards, effectively in 2020, the Academy Board of Governors made a decision that to be eligible for Best Picture consideration, a film needs to meet 2 of 4 inclusion standards. And it was my job coming in to figure out how we implement this, how we make this make sense for a global film competition. And that required a lot of conversation, a lot of collaboration with the industry, with filmmakers, production companies, distributors. I mean, the list goes on. But I am so proud of the response and the receptiveness by the industry to say, okay, it's time. We're not here to push back. We're here to collaborate. We're here to figure this out. And on that personal anecdote, I had a conversation literally just last week with a filmmaker in India who, you start to think, is this conversation centered around the US? What is this about? And it was a really honest conversation. Like, I want to submit my film, help me understand what these are. This is not a language that we use. And I started to talk about the intent and the purpose and the reality that there is always someone who is not represented in this space. And that really is the goal of these standards, to make this industry pause for a second. We move so quickly, this automaticity, right? We book who we work with, we work with who we know, we continue down this path. But if we just pause for a second, and if these inclusion standards can stimulate that pause, which they are doing, that's something I'm incredibly proud of. And they don't go into effect for another year, so to just see the response and the support from the industry, that is a win for me that I really, it keeps me going. There are good days, there are bad days, but that really does keep me going, that reminder that, we're collectively moving forward as an industry.
Janine?
Let's see. Well, I've worked in this industry far longer than I care to admit. And as such, I have been the only one at the table for a good portion of my career, faced barriers. And so what drives me is eliminating those barriers. And the victory and the just self-win that makes me so excited is when a barrier has been taken out of the equation and you can see someone have success who wouldn't have otherwise had it. And I just look at, I'm going to give you two examples, if you don't mind, real quick. One, we have a writer who's an alum of our program who was, and he's absolutely brilliant. And he had applied to other programs and he wasn't accepted. And he, to survive, was separating, I think, pig ears at a dog food factory. And just now, he's got a project in development with our studio with big talent attached to produce. We haven't announced it yet, so I can't kind of elaborate on it, but that kind of win, where you've transformed someone's life, where you've knocked down that barrier and they see they have an opportunity. And then to what you're saying, he'll have that success, but he'll come back and he'll inspire others to try. And then I think a really recent one that just really got me and it just told me this is why I do what I do, because we launched a below-the-line traineeship on Jordan Peele's Nope. Hadn't been done before. We launched that during the pandemic. And one of the trainees on there, his personal story of going from being homeless to working as a trainee on Nope. And now he's gone on and worked on other TV and film, projects as well. And I get chills because I just like, look, we are transforming and making change and doing it in such a positive way. So that excites me.
All right, Olga, you're up now, girlie.
Yeah, I'm up. I was like, okay, so we are the new kids in the block, as you can see. I'm like, an immigrant that just came here like really just like 10 years ago. So these are like, I look up and hear you and I'm like, wow, I'm just waiting for what we can do like in 10, 20 years and all the programs that you've done. Congratulations, I'm honored. I think that one of the things that the Latinx House has bring me so much that I'm proud of is literally creating a space where we can see each other, all Latinos, and elevate each other and see our differences. We have a house at Sundance every year, and I had a movie as a producer at Sundance in 2013, and I remember like walking on Main Street, like shivering. I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have a network, and nobody, like Latina immigrant with an accent from Mexico, no, like you're not allowed. So kind of, I didn't know anybody. And then just for me to go to Sundance and have a house where we celebrated so many movies, so many directors, producers. That was the first year with most Latinas and Latinos and Latinas and Latinx ever at Sundance screening a movie. And thank God that we had that, because I just that moment before the pandemic, I get like emotional just thinking about it, because we created a space for everybody to see each other and everybody to be like, yes, we can do this. We just gotta know who you are and we can build this together. So that's what I really get emotional about it. I'm just gonna continue working for it.
Thank you. I'm
I'll say
super
quickly,
fast.
quickly, two parts of it. So kind of on the corporate side, where we have leadership that is committed to no longer doing things at the status quo. So when we have executives calling and saying, hey, we want, one of the ERGs to come and take a look at this content and really give us, that intel from that community and that identity, I think that is really rewarding and really shows the work and the commitment. And then on the content side, I'll just give this, P-Valley you mentioned. One of the main characters is a transgendered Black woman named Uncle Clifford. And I have a friend, and in the Black community, there's still a lot of homophobia. And I have a male friend that said, Jam, my family calls me Jam. Jam, he said, I love P-Valley. He said, I wasn't sure about Uncle Clifford, but is making me see things in a different way. And I think that speaks to the importance of the work that we do in this industry, that we have the ability to shape people's perception and people's beliefs and thoughts about each other. And so it is so important that we show diverse stories that are authentic and different walks of life. And so that really, to me, is like just, fills my heart, because change is coming and it's here.
When you talk about trans, Black and brown individuals in particular, it is life-saving,
Yes.
legitimately life-saving. So that
Exactly.
cannot be understated. We have about 5 minutes left, and Gabby, I'll go to you.
You know, for me, I'm proudest of our colleagues, you know, in our group, both on the macro side and the immediate side. When you kind of look through our hallways, and I came from agency and being a longtime agent, and the hallways looked very different without having to give much detail. So to see the diversity, you know, not just in the color of our skin or in our cultures, but in the ages and in the genders, and all these opinions mixed into one and inside of the same walls, they create magical things, you know, and we've kind of seen it firsthand, and it's just been daily when we, you know, thankfully we're back in offices, when we walk into those halls, it's just, it's refreshing, and it's you know, for us that have been in it longer, you know, it feels good because you know what it's been, but you become prideful for those that won't know anything different, you know, and it'll be great. This will be their normal, and that's what they'll push, and that's what they'll empower, and again, that's what has longevity and sustainability. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And Elizabeth? One particular anecdote that you're proud of in your work, either now or other work that you've seen in the industry that really, again, we got to light the torch for why we do what we do.
I was actively listening, so I wasn't preparing a statement in my head. But I'm particularly proud of the, I've said it already a million times, like I'm really excited about the investment. And in terms of my work as a filmmaker, when I didn't get the green lights that I was looking for, I was able to find alternative ways to raise my own funding through grants, working directly with nonprofit organizations, so I could last long enough to be here for this moment
Yeah.
of opportunity, and really looking forward to what we're able to build with the Global Institute for Black Girls in Film and Media. We're actively looking for advisors, looking for sponsors, looking for institutions who want to work with us to really explore, as Jam was saying, sorry, I just missed you, about how powerful it is to have impactful narratives that really help people be seen. And as a filmmaker, where I make social impact films, specifically about Black women and their health issues, and be able to screen it for our audience and see themselves, and be crying, and know that they're heard, that they're not feeling alone, like that's what I'm pushing for, and that's why I think diversity in film is important, not just so we can check the box, not just for political reasons, but because these stories really have impact in our society.
I love that. Asif, I'll give you the last question. We got a couple minutes left.
Thank you. I think for me it was probably the moment when, so we run a number of amazing programs, and actually Karen Horn, who some of you might know, runs, she's got an amazing sort of, you know, slate of programs that we manage. But I think the real moment for me was we started to consider how we can make some of these programs truly global and open them up. And you know, it was the right thing to do because we're a global company. You know, we have a footprint in many countries. But I remember someone sending me a message after we opened them up, and he said, "It's the first time I've been able to apply for a program that's not only in the US. Like I can reach that program and I can be part of it." And I didn't understand initially because, you know, we live in our own privilege and think it's fine, or we think we're inclusive, but there's always someone to the point who's missing out. And that was really powerful for me, just to understand that we can totally have an impact from a global perspective. And there are people in certain countries who don't have access to what we have here. And giving them access is just so powerful because you're changing lives globally then.
Yeah, because the disparity sometimes is stark.
Exactly.
It's stark. I want to thank all of you for your kind and illuminating and just, I would say, inspiring words. I want to thank my co-moderator, Ms. Carla Renata, and I want to thank the folks at TheWrap, as well as all of the organizations that these are a part of, for making these folks available and asking me and Carla to be here, and all of you for watching. Thank you.
Thank you.